Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Humor in the C-Suite. My guest this week is Richard Leest. As a director of IT services for York Region, Richard leads the planning, delivery, and support of information technology for almost 4,500 employees, 300 applications, and over 11,000 computers and mobile devices. Richard has over 30 years' experience working in IT. He has a background in computer networking, which over his career, he has translated into a well-rounded knowledge of information technology field as a whole. Like prior to this appointment as director, Richard spent 6 years as manager of enterprise architecture and security at the region, where he led the corporate cybersecurity. In his role as director, Richard is responsible for helping to set the direction of the digital technology at the region, and he sits on the region's digital leadership team, where he collaborates with data, information, and technology leaders from across the corporation to drive digital transformation. And boy, is it transforming fast. We had a great talk about how he leads with humor. And it's not about telling the best joke, as he says. It's really about incorporating your sense of humor into everything you do. You guys are going to love him. So please welcome Richard Leest. Thank you so much for being here. So I thought we would just start off by telling everyone about what you do, who you are, how you got to be where you are, because you've like thousands of people you're working with within your department, and so yeah, I thought we would just start there.
Perfect. Well, I work for York Region, and we have 1.222 million. I think I saw the sign. Residents in York Region now. It's a growing region. We're the regional municipality, so there's 9 local municipalities that are also closer to our residents, and we do a lot of the back end services and community and health services, those sorts of things. In my team, I've have the honor of leading, over 100 people of technology professionals. We provide that back end infrastructure and services for the region to be able to provide those services and build the infrastructure we do. So it's just some really fantastic people. I find in IT too, including myself, we're all a little quirky. So it just it makes my day, right, to be able to interact with these really, again, intelligent people who all have different strengths and bring different things to the table. It's really an incredible place to work.
Well, I love that. And I live with a quirky IT guy too. And as I like to tell him, as you know, there's a 1 letter difference between wireless and wifeless. So there you go.
Yeah, that's funny.
I'm like, ah. So I love that. And technology has changed so much since you've started, and,
Yes.
and ever changing and your role within that. But we always, before we get into that, I always like to start the podcast off with, do you have a favorite joke you'd like to share?
That's actually it's a great question. One of the things with jokes and humor is I suffer from a poor memory, especially when it comes to jokes. So when I hear
Yes.
a great joke, I remember how I felt about that joke, maybe who told the joke, how they delivered it, but I very rarely are able to remember the details.
Yeah.
And as my spouse would tell me, I'm also very poor in delivering a joke, even when I do know it. but but there is something that does come to mind and I'm not going to tell the specific joke, really just around the environment. And my father-in-law passed away earlier this year, and one of the things that I distinctly remember, it came up in his celebration of life, is my father-in-law also suffered from the ability to remember jokes. So he had one particular joke that he really enjoyed, and he printed it off and he put it in his wallet.
Wow.
And that way, when he was in the situation where he had the opportunity to tell a joke, he would pull out that piece of paper and he would read that particular joke. And my father-in-law was a huge Leafs fan, Toronto Maple Leafs fan, and there was that rivalry with the Habs. So this particular joke was, it wasn't politically correct, but it was very much about the rivalry between the Leafs and the Habs. And the best thing about it is the first time I heard my father-in-law tell this joke was the punchline at the end of the joke had the F word in it, and it was very politically incorrect.
Yeah.
And it was not him at all. I never heard him swear. So when he told that punchline, you just burst out laughing because it was so
So
unique and so powerful to hear it come from his mouth. It's really really interesting.
I love that. And I love the fact you said it's a feeling more than I all the jokes give you a feeling more than you knowing what the actual words were, which
Yes.
is so funny because it is how you feel. And even when I was a kid, if you were sick, you would always tell your parents I feel funny. Right? It was never like it never had a good connotation to it, which probably
Yeah.
meant you're going to be sick
And
all the
I'm not a funny person, but I appreciate humor very much so.
Well, you say that, yet we met at a conference. I was your keynote speaker, and you got up and you talked to your staff there or the leaders of your staff of that group. And you just made it like a place everyone wanted to be. You made it fun, and all the teams, everyone seemed so happy, which is so weird for IT because I know how much my husband hates everyone. And everyone just see I was just like in shock. I was like, a happy IT place? What is happening? And but that comes from you and your leadership. So do you like you came across as you use humor in your leadership style and maybe you're not, telling the joke at the water cooler. But do you find that you do use humor in those environments quite a bit?
Absolutely. We're in a tough position when you're supporting technology. We all know, like we all have trouble using our phones and our computers, and they don't always cooperate. And sometimes you're trying to get things done, and people are, who call us are generally frustrated. We don't get a lot of, "Hey, I'm just calling to tell you how much we appreciate you guys." Normally, it's like, "Hey, no, they're working. I need to make this
Yeah.
call. What's going on?"
Oh my
So
God, so funny.
so having, the ability to use humor and to really lighten things up, I think is so key and important to leading a team of technology professionals. And I do incorporate that into my leadership style.
Yeah.
But it's also part of who I am. I tend to deflect with humor. So if there's something that's very stressful for me, I often will find myself almost like laughing or grinning or smiling. It's a
Yeah.
bit of an emotional reaction, and I don't know. I just go with it.
That's good. It's good to always go with those nice feelings because it puts
Yes,
everyone else at ease, right?
agreed.
And can you and you were also so personal. Like when we met, you were talking about your daughter's wedding, which sounded like such a beautiful occasion and sharing that with with people you work with who you might not even be close to, but you're still sharing something personal. Do you find that when you're dealing with people within your departments, can you give us an example of how you would bring humor into those situations?
Sure. No, I definitely when really in any situation, whether we're I'm involved with colleagues from one of our departments and in public works, for instance, that humor comes through as well because to me it's important to really build those relationships and to strengthen them, and humor is a great way to do that, and just to have fun, to lighten up the conversation, because then when you do get to those challenging conversations or you have disagreements or there's some really tough decisions that have implications, you already have sort of a framework to be able to do that in, because people know you at a different level, right? They understand, who I am. They're able to, be able to not just joke, but also tell some unique things about maybe what they did in the weekend, what they did on their vacation, what's important to them about their families, and those sorts of things. And that's all again about that emotional connection. And I'm a firm believer in that humor just it channels that. It opens up that channel because when you laugh, it almost resets the conversation. It gives you that ability to open up.
It definitely, leads to trust and all those things, but it almost sounds like you're also a great listener.
I try. I try. My wife might not always say that, but
It's okay. I come from many generations of shitty listeners. So I'm like in one ear, out the other. Oh my gosh. And do you find when you are dealing with, because a lot of times I'm assuming you're dealing with all the team leaders who sort of take everything down to all the other people who work, because you're a huge department, like
yeah.
thousands of people are within your department. Do you find leading that and trying to get do you find like the balance of that hard, or are you spreading yourself thin, or
I don't no, I don't think the balance is that difficult. Again, humor, and it sets the context to having those good conversations, and being able to collaborate, to roll up our sleeves and work together really really well.
yeah.
It just again it allows people to open up more, because when you introduce with humor, when you start opening up and talking about some personal things, then it allows them to feel they're in a safe environment, and they're able to express their opinions and do so safely.
I love that because it's so important for people to be able to say, no, this actually isn't working, and to go
Mhm.
from there. Whereas, if there's no levity within a workplace, people are often afraid to, really show what's wrong or what's going on, or, you don't want to be that whistleblower bowing. No. Do you find it really helps with team collaboration?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, it's again, um with team collaboration, by starting with humor, other people tend to reciprocate, right? You have a little bit of fun, and
Yeah.
what's the saying? Play hard. Uh, what is that saying again? Work hard, play hard.
Yeah, I think that's it. I'm
Yes,
not good with
something like
sayings. I'm
that.
always
Yeah,
like, yeah, pinch of pepper. No, it's salt. Anyway.
yeah.
Well, he's like, I have no
But
idea.
but
What is
but
it?
we do work, we do work hard, and it's I think sometimes governments have reputation, but there's a lot of really hardworking people in this organization, and I see the stress from it. We have we have different demands from residents and the public now on how government services are provided. There's incredible growth in our region, so our staff are, they're often doing more with less, and that puts
Right.
people under pressure. And not everybody's really good at dealing with that stress and anxiety around the pressure. And
Yeah.
having things like humor and having some fun at work really helps deflect that, and give people some balance too. Give staff the
Yeah.
balance to be healthier in many ways from a mental perspective.
What kind of stuff do you guys do there to help with that? Like, do you have like a lot of people have like beer cart Fridays, or law? I'm
Yeah, beer
assuming
cart
that's not a
Fridays.
thing in the government, but
No, 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 no. I mean, we do. We're very diverse here as well,
yeah.
which means the politically correctness, whatever we want to call that,
Yeah.
is important. And
Yeah.
I think that's where being able to have humor, to tell jokes and those sorts of things, but keeping them, light, and they're not just being very thoughtful in how you do that is important, because then people do feel included, and they're not offended by what's
Yeah.
being said either, and that probably is more the challenging things, because we have our own
Right.
biases, we have our own upbringing, we've heard
Yes.
jokes that maybe we've heard 1,000 times, not appropriate for the workplace, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's again something really key in providing
Yeah.
humor.
Like your father-in-law's. No.
Yes.
Exactly. Have you ever had like something happen where a joke falls short, or a story you're telling falls short, and you got to sort of backstep?
Oh yes,
Oh
yes.
yeah.
It happens, right? I
It
mean, it
does.
happens. Often it's in front of an audience where something comes out, because you're maybe, it's just more on the cuff when you're speaking to individuals, and then something comes out, and you realize right away it's like, whoops,
Yeah.
and and honestly, it's just dealing with it immediately. So if as part of what I'm talking about, I can
Yeah.
quickly backtrack or say whoops or that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
sometimes it's more of the approach that immediately after you go to maybe a particular individual that would be maybe offended or
Offended.
take it the wrong way, and apologizing immediately, and because it's those things, right? Just to catch yourself, because often
Yeah.
that's what it is with our biases and things that maybe we say that we shouldn't. It's being aware, and once you're aware, that really helps be able to to address things quickly.
Well, I can't imagine how much inner swearing goes on in an IT department. Because if I can't print, I'll tell you something. I'm like, ah, and that's just like one little thing. Do you find because you've been in it so long, you were in cybersecurity before this?
Mhm.
And do you find like just because you're having to change so much all the time, is that a challenge in itself as well?
It's definitely a challenge, right? It's the pace of change in
Yeah.
IT. I mean, we joke, we like to run setup.exe, we like to install stuff, we like to change things, and that's what
Yeah.
we're always doing. Everybody always complains, like, I booted up my computer this morning, everything's different. Like,
Yes.
that energizes us, but to a
Right.
certain point. I think the pace nowadays, and I don't think it's, in IT alone, I think it's in life nowadays. The
Yeah.
pace is just, it's ramped up, and I think that's where it's important to make sure that we keep ourselves in check, and again, we spend so much time at work to
Yeah.
have fun, right? It's important to work hard, but it's also important to keep that balance of having fun with those individuals you're working with.
Absolutely. Little three-legged race every now and again around the office.
Yep.
So good.
No beer pong or anything like that, but
That's so funny. Who doesn't love a good game of beer pong, Richard?
no,
You know?
I have a 22-year-old, so
Oh god. Yeah. Isn't that amazing? A 22-year-old was now born in 2002. Like it freaks me out. Like I remember counting and figuring out how old I would be in the year 2000. Right? And we all remember in the year 2000, right? From Conan O'Brien and all that. So fast. I can't like, I was just graduating high school when computers were coming in. So I definitely am not the generation of that and do like, it is a challenge. I do you find when you're teaching new programs other than or your people are teaching new programs to everyone who's working within the region because you are a government agency, like do you find when you use humor when you're teaching people about the changes, does that help?
definitely. Definitely. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's again, keeping it light, um,
Yeah.
using different techniques, right? Everybody learns differently too, so humor is one thing. Not everybody appreciates humor. So we
Yes,
used to
it's
be in
true.
the finance department, and they're they're wired a little differently sometimes, and yeah,
No offense, finance department. No offense.
no,
Will you pay us? We're fine. I often find with technology there is such a pressure, and like something will go down and no one will know why, and you're just sort of left sort of waiting for everything to come back. Or I am, if like a system goes down. Do you find like humor when you're deflecting in those situations, or like you're sort of serious stuff is always going to happen, but how you go about it to de-stress those moments.
Oh yeah, that it's so important. It's when we have critical issues here at the region, they've happened in the past. There's two elements that I think are really important. One is food, because technology people, once they get really busy, they forget to eat. But the second is some of that humor, as they're dealing with these really challenging puzzles that they need to solve in order to get things back up and running. And
Yeah.
both are really important elements, because again, a lot of times these things happen late on a Friday.
Oh,
The team has been working all week long, and then next thing you know, they're working
it's
hours and
crashed.
hours and hours to get things back up and running, and probably having to change their plans of what they were originally hoping to do on the weekend.
Yeah, and you're always like, why did it break? I haven't touched anything. That's what I always
Mhm.
say. And then
Yeah, it's Murphy's law.
inevitably I probably have touched something. I'm like, why did I delete this? I didn't mean to. Do you have any like personal benefits that you found that humor has really helped you in your life?
um, No, I think definitely, as in my life, in even in my home, and
Yeah.
at home with the family, humor is really really important. Life can be stressful, and it's important when especially at the end of everybody's work day. You're sitting there, and a glass of wine is nice, but to be able to chat and to make fun of maybe some stressful things that happen during the day, again, just a really great way to bond, and to be able
Yeah.
to sort of get rid of some of that stress and anxiety, and be able to relax.
How do you find it working intergenerationally with all the young punks coming in?
I,
Do you
I
f
give up. I don't know the lingo, right? I find it's kind of like with memory. If you admit it, then there's no problem. It's kind of like, I
Yeah.
don't understand exactly what you guys are saying or why you do the things you do, but
Yeah. It's pretty clutch, I should say. That's a new word, clutch.
yeah,
Uh,
well,
I don't know what it means. I think it means cool. I don't know. I'm afraid to ask. It's been too long. Everyone keeps saying it. I'm like, yeah, sure, that's it. Sure. Uh, I often wonder when do you find that you have a like a tight sort of knit group that you're dealing with, and like in terms of your relationship with them and using humor, like people in the C-suite with you or the leaders who are with you, do you use humor differently with them than you would the rest of the staff?
I think it's maybe not. It's less about the position. I work with a great, like our senior management team here at the region, and my fellow colleagues and staff. The humor is okay. It's accepted, and I think it's more important to understand your audience, right?
Yeah.
And people relate to different things, and humor, if it can be delivered in such a way because something about the particular individual. I think that's more powerful, right? And it develops a better connection, and that's more important than worrying about, oh, I'm in front of my boss's boss, and I have to be careful with what
Yeah.
I'm saying. And again, it's keeping humor more politically correct. I mean, I don't really care for that term much anymore, but
Yeah.
it's just keeping things funny, but not pushing boundaries is probably the best way to put it. We're here to work. We're
Mhm.
not. It's not stand up comedy
That's
where you
right.
can push boundaries,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
I think that's again that's probably the most important thing to note.
But even the day we spent together, like you had a few team building games that you played beforehand where someone was on at the front of the room and they'd say something. And if it affected them, everyone would move forward. And by the end of that game, everyone was literally standing on the dance floor together. All
Yes,
right. And it was so amazing because everyone was coming from different backgrounds and different ages. But those team building games, and I played rock, paper, scissors with you guys and all that. But all those team building games can really bring people together and make us seem, when we seem worlds apart, because of our ages or what we're dealing with or what department, there are common things that we can always find within those moments.
agreed, agreed. And I think one of the cool things is you have a whole bunch of technology people who are predominantly introverted. So,
Yes.
and I think my colleague Michelle, who
Yeah.
and others who set up that day and that agenda, we're really smart because a lot of those things are fairly simple and things that don't take a lot of courage to start, but they get people's energy going, and people start having fun before they even realize what they're doing.
That's
And
right.
and then maybe some of the more extroverted pieces that they're hiding come
Yeah.
out, and you can really see those connections happen. It was really wonderful to see.
Yeah, it was. I was touched by it. I was saying, I jumped in a couple times, not gonna lie. I was like, yeah, I want to be with you guys. Which, you know what? Even having those kind of days where we're having, play days or, days that aren't just for development of appreciation and all those things, I find really help. And that, that always comes from the top as well. That always comes from the leadership and it always works its way down, like you never want to punch down as a leader. You always want to punch up. And it's that self-deprecating, having fun, taking a poke at yourself more than anyone else and sharing things like that. Do you find I don't want to say de-risk humor, but I find just like, because you're saying you're not that funny, but naming a boardroom a funny name can bring humor into those moments. or, finding just saying, yeah, we do have a sense of humor around here, but showing it in different ways, other than telling the next best joke. Do you guys do any of that there?
Oh, yes, we definitely do. I think I like naming conventions. When I started many many years ago, we had a computer system, and some of the technology in the back end had names, and I think it was 7 disk drives, and they named them the Seven Dwarfs. Right. So I mean,
That's
that's an
great.
example. I have a particular individual who may be located quite closely of where I'm sitting right now, who
Okay,
likes to
okay.
put Easter eggs in presentations and those kind of things. So when I know that he's been involved in the creation of something, I'm always like, I wonder what's in there. If I click on something by accident, what's going to happen? So there's lots of lots of fun things that we do, and
Yeah.
I've learned to expect them, especially from certain individuals.
I love that. So they're pranking you with tech.
Yes.
Oh, that is so great. Oh my God. Teach me your ways. That's so much fun. That's great. I always like to add like a PS at the end of a email or, just something fun. I had someone email me the other day saying, I'm free to answer any questions for you except for math. I'm horrible at math. Do not ask me anything math. So and I thought that was such a great way to end his email. And I was like, you know what? I'm not that great at math either. So we sort of bonded on that. Do you find when you are leading your team and there is something that, is more serious? I mean, we can laugh at your father in law's joke and, still. And I think he'd be appreciative of that, even though he's passed away. My dad was the same. Was always telling. He was the king of the dad jokes. My dad, and he'd always tell like the best comics in our country, just the worst jokes, and I would have to sit there and watch them like take it, and just that made me so happy because I knew how uncomfortable they were.
Right.
Are you in your leadership style? Do you think your team has benefited from it and they're more productive because of it?
Absolutely. I think again, I'm a firm believer that when things are too serious, right, we box ourselves in, and often, there's I've seen there's been research, right, on watching children and how they learn and how they interact and those sorts of things, and they just naturally have fun, right, and they're curious and those sorts of things, and I think humor is again that a bit of a gateway in order to get our teams thinking more almost like children, right? And to have fun and to laugh and to really allow the creativity and the ingenuity to start flowing so we can solve some of these really challenging problems and come up with strategies, right, in order to support the many important things that our organization is behind.
That is great because when we don't take ourselves so seriously, we really can, focus on being curious and adventurous and innovative and more receptive because we're not afraid to fail. Or if we do, it's okay.
Correct.
And so often we're so afraid of what other people think. I don't know who they are, but they sure stop a lot of laughter for a lot of people. I am just so thrilled. Is there anything you'd like to share? Any advice you can give our listeners who might not be, a leader yet, but are trying to get there in terms of leading people with a bit of levity?
I think try something. Like I said, I don't feel like I'm a naturally funny person. Like I don't have that ability to deliver incredible jokes. However, it's just start small, right? Just start with something, often, about ourselves, maybe something funny that happened, and watch what happens. It's quite often it fuels other people to, to do the same, to reciprocate. Start small, and it's really incredible when you start to see the results, and it becomes more of a habit.
That is so perfect because we really do. Whatever we focus on, we get better at. So if we're,
Yeah.
trying to notice the humor within our lives, those little moments, and learning to laugh, then we find more of those moments, which is so great. So we always like to end Humor in the C-Suite, Richard, with what's your funniest story? Do you have a story you can share with us? Eh.
I do. I have so many. If my wife was here, she's like, just don't tell any farm stories. So I'll avoid that whole. I grew up
What do
on a
you
farm,
mean?
so
Now I got to know the farm story.
I have so many. There's so many things. Growing up on a farm, there's so many funny things that
Did
happen.
you
So
both grow up on a farm?
no, 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 no. She grew up in Richmond Hill, and yeah, nurse
Okay.
by trade. So no, 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 quite a different story.
Okay, okay. But you grew up on a farm.
I did. I
Oh,
did.
where was your farm?
Cookstown area.
Okay. What kind of farm was it?
Predominantly vegetables. So my dad
Okay.
grew asparagus and spinach and rhubarb, and yes,
Wow. Did you work on the farm?
I did. I was child labor. Am I allowed to
Uh,
say that?
yeah, because that's back then. That's why people had kids to work
I
on the
know.
farm.
That
Yeah,
is true.
we didn't have the technology. You had to. So what? So okay, you got to share one funny story from the farm, and then we'll get to your funny story. Do you mind?
Sure. Sure. No, not at all. Not at all. So I was young, and my dad, we did have some cattle, so we had an area that was fenced in for the cattle, and I can't remember exactly why, but we had to build like a new fence. So my dad was showing me how with a tractor you were able to get this wire fence to be really, really super tight, right? And then we nailed it in place, and he was pretty impressed with it. And I learned a new skill of how to actually put together a fence, and didn't think anything of it. So probably, I betcha, it was hours later, we had dirt bikes. So I hopped on my dirt bike and I was booting around, and I come around a corner, and guess what was straight in front of me that I totally forgot about? This
The fence.
flipping fence. And it was a tight fence. And the next thing I remember was probably 30 minutes or more later, I woke up, dirt bike was way over there. I was way, way from the fence. And yes, I survived, but
Did
I
you break
remember thinking to
anything?
myself, no, I don't think so. I was pretty resilient.
You just
Yes,
woke up a
I
half
just
hour
woke up.
later. That's
Yes,
nothing. Oh
I
my
know.
God, that's crazy. Did someone
Yes.
find you or you just woke up and had to go
No,
back
I woke
home?
up and told no one. Because remember, especially with my mother was she did not like the fact that we had dirt bikes, right? My dad just
Sure.
kind of tolerated it. So when we
Yeah.
injured ourselves on our dirt bikes, the last thing we said, it'd be like, "Where's that bruise from?" Nowhere.
Nowhere. What happened to your head? Why are you
Yeah,
concussed? No, it
yeah,
just passed out for a few hours.
yeah. Not as smart as I used to be.
Oh, I don't know. I think you turned out pretty good. Okay, so that's so funny. Do not tell mom, no matter how injured you get. That's so good. Oh my gosh. Okay, so what was the story you wanted to share?
So back to my father-in-law, and then I'll
Yes.
let with that joke. So, and my wife, who I mentioned, was a nurse. So beside that little piece of paper with a joke was his piece of paper that my wife printed out for him with all his medications and his medical history. So he many times confused which piece of paper to, pass on to a medical professional, but I got to experience one in particular. And he had a little episode. It was at our house. It was just myself and my son. We were there, and everything was fine. But we ended up calling 911. Just before that, too, we had ordered the pizza. So next thing you know, and we're on a dead end street with six houses. We had the pizza guy show up. We had a couple of fire trucks, and we had the police, and we had paramedics all show up on our little dead end street all at the same time. So it's just chaos, right? And I'm trying to talk to people, and firefighters and paramedics are asking questions. My son's like, what do I do about the pizza? It's like, go run out there and get the pizza. And so anyway, the paramedics are like, okay, Bill, my father-in-law, we're going to take you to the hospital. Do you have a list of medications, whatever? So he's like, and at this point he's okay, and he's like, oh, so he passes a piece of paper to the paramedic, and guess what it is?
The
It's his
maple leaf
my
joke.
dad's joke. So, you can always tell because they start reading it and reading it and reading it, and then sure enough, he's like, I think you gave me the wrong piece of paper, and then we realized what happened again for like the third or fourth time.
Oh my gosh. I love that. Just pass the note of the joke. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And here
That
you are,
is,
like a very stressful situation, and there's a bit of
yeah.
levity in there because of some humor, because my father-in-law printed off that joke on that piece of paper.
There you go. Amazing. I love it. And I love the fact that, you really are the real deal. And you are, you have this so much responsibility. So many people rely on you, like hundreds of thousands of people, really, within that department. And it's pretty incredible how great you are. Like you're just so calm. You're one of the calmest guys.
I try my
It's
best.
yeah, I love it. You're like, "Get out." No. I so appreciate you being on Humor in the C-suite. I will I guess we should just say goodbye for now.
Okay.
I've actually enjoyed this talk so much. You've contributed so much, and I hope it helps people who are, want to be in the C-suite, who trust that people respond better to humor and that it's okay to use levity in a lot of different ways other than telling a joke and knowing your strength in that and how you are a great leader. So thank you, Richard.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, and I hope I'm able to help other individuals out there, especially those who maybe are working in some really stressful environments where
Yeah.
humor isn't in their workplace. And I'm a firm believer that that's what every workplace needs. We spend a lot of time, maybe not way too much, but a lot of time in
Yeah.
workplaces in our lives. It's really an important element. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.